Hi, this is Daniel Miller with NASCO, and we've been talking about evaluating cooperative staff members. So we've talked a little bit about how to make a culture of evaluations that are useful, what are some types of evaluations, what are some different ways that your co-op can make sure your evaluations are seen as fair, why you have evaluations in the first place. Well, today I wanted to talk a little bit about what are some best practices, what are some guidelines that your co-op can look at for how to deal with evaluations, so that you have an evaluation that you feel like you understand, feel comfortable implementing, and everybody feels like is a useful and fair evaluation that does what the co-op needs. So what are some best practices for having a good evaluation? You know, one thing is that most co-ops find it useful to get information from multiple angles. What are the other staff members saying about the person being evaluated? What do board members say? What does the average member of the co-op say? What do people who are outside of the co-op say? So these are all going to give you different perspectives on that person's work. You're going to want to make sure that your evaluations are based on the person's actual job descriptions and your policies for what they're supposed to be doing and what they're not allowed to do. You want to make sure that those evaluations are based on what they have been asked to do and not something else that maybe people want to ask about. So that way the person being evaluated knows what is expected of them and knows that that is how their success is going to be measured. And if you find that your job descriptions don't match up with what you want, the way to deal with that is to change the job descriptions so that you're asking for what it is that you need. You want to make sure that your evaluation ends with a report that makes clear recommendations for your staff. If you have an evaluation and everybody has a survey and you fill them out 1 through 5 and then you have a spreadsheet and it says, you know, you're doing a mediocre job here and a wonderful job here and a pretty good job here, and then that's it, well, that's not necessarily helpful. It's not helpful for the staff member who's not sure exactly what people might want to see as an improvement or exactly how people might want to prioritize the things that are going well. It's also going to be really hard for the members and the board members in the future. And they look back at last year's evaluation and say, well, here's this thing that wasn't going so well, but what do we do with that? As opposed to having an evaluation that comes out with a report and makes clear recommendations and makes clear demands of staff. And then they can say, well, actually last year's evaluation said that we needed to see these specific improvements, and you did those things, so that's great. So here's how we want to grow from now on. Or those things didn't happen, so we need to talk about why those things didn't happen. So you should also have an option to let people make anonymous responses or to leave contact information for follow-up. So it may be that somebody says, I don't feel safe sharing some of these criticisms because maybe I am worried that, you know, whatever, I live here at the co-op and I'm giving feedback on the person who would possibly give me an eviction notice, and I feel unsafe saying critical things. So you want to make sure that there is a chance for people to give feedback in an anonymous way. You also want to be able to let people say, no, I want to talk in detail about some of these things. I have some things to share that don't get reflected in the survey, or that I'd feel more comfortable talking about one-on-one with the people doing the evaluation. So I want to leave my name and my contact information so that you can come back and talk to me more about this. And you want to follow up on items that are concerning. So if you see something that's really loaded language and somebody seems really passionate or concerned about something, come back and talk to them about what it is that they're concerned about. If you see something that says, you know, I have reason to think that this person is misusing funds from the co-op, well, that's really serious, and you're going to want to make sure that you can flag that and come back and say, whoa, actually we heard some things that seem like really big problems and we need to talk about them. You're going to want to have some easily measurable questions. So a really common thing you'll see is, you know, on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, so that you can use that as, you know, that's not going to give you the whole picture, but you can use that as a way to start getting some idea in general, on average, how people feel about the work in these specific ways. You're going to want to have everybody give the chance to say, I don't know, or I don't have any experience with this person in this area, right? So maybe you're asking, you know, you have somebody who's active in the local neighborhood association and they sit on your board as a volunteer, and that's just a way to sort of build relationships with the community around you. Well, that person probably doesn't know that much about the daily experience of life as a member of the co-op. And so they may not be able to give you useful information. You may have a member who's lived at the co-op for a while, but they don't have anything to do with the co-op's finances, and everybody's individual debts are, a confidential matter, so they wouldn't know. So you're always going to want to make sure that people can say, I don't know, so that you can say, answer the questions that you know something about, and it's fine to say you don't have any experience on these other things. That way you make sure that you have a fair system where you're collecting the information that's relevant from each person. You're going to want to make sure that you're basing the questions on specific duties as much as possible. So if somebody has a job description and it's a page and a half long and it lists all of these specific things they're supposed to do, well, take each one of those specific tasks. The co-op staff member is expected to maintain good financial records and issue reports on a monthly basis. Is that happening 1 through 5? Or I don't know. Right? So you want to make sure that the questions are as specific as possible so that people can say, oh yes, that specific thing is happening or is not happening well. You'll get more useful information as a person who's a member of the co-op doing this evaluation if you're looking at it and getting this really specific and granular feedback. You're going to want to leave room for comments on each question, or maybe it's broken into sections. This is financial, this is maintenance, this is member relations, right? So you're either going to want to have options for comments on each question, or at least on each section of questions, so that people can say, is there something else that we have missed in designing this evaluation process that you think is important and want to share? You're going to want to make sure that you ask the relationship to the staff member. Are you the person filling out this evaluation survey? Are you a board member? Are you another staff member? Are you the person being evaluated? Are you a member of the co-op? Are you somebody outside of the co-op who's a stakeholder? Right? So asking that relationship can help give you context as you're putting together this report, and so that you're looking and saying, well, all of the members love this staff person, but everybody that works with them has some real concerns. So that's something that's useful to know. Some things that are useful about how not to conduct evaluations. You do not want to assume problems. So what I mean by that is to say you don't want to assume that this person isn't doing a good job, and an evaluation is just a way to sort of get that down on paper when you've already decided that that's why you're doing the evaluation. You want to look at the evaluation. It's something that is useful because it helps everybody grow. It helps everybody understand what's going on. Definitely do not use an evaluation process to build a case for somebody that you want to fire or somebody that you want to take other sort of punitive action against. It's going to affect the way that you design your evaluation process, and honestly, it's mostly going to smell wrong. Your staff members are going to know that this is what's going on. Your board members are going to know what's going on. You want to look at this objectively and in context. Your evaluations need to be open and honest in their intent if you're going to get good data. You need to say, this is how we're measuring the growth and performance of this staff member, because the co-op wants good staff. The co-op wants to invest in staff, to have staff that can make the co-op move forward. And so giving them clear expectations, getting honest feedback about what's going well or not going well, that's all really crucial. If the staff person has done something serious enough to merit firing them, document it and act on it. That's not something that you use an evaluation to do. If somebody is stealing money from the co-op or acting abusively to your members or using the office to do something illegal, don't do an evaluation process in a 3-month survey and come back and write a report. They're doing something that's illegal or unethical. You should act on that more immediately. So just be aware that this is not an appropriate use for an evaluation process. You should act on that more directly. But if you're just concerned in general about somebody's performance, or think maybe there's a reason to be concerned, that might be a better fit for an evaluation. And again, it's something that you want to evaluate that person in context. So ask them, their coworkers, their superiors, people that work under them, the members that are working with them, the board members. Ask everybody that you can, wherever it's appropriate, to give feedback, and also try to ask, how well is this person doing, but also how well are their coworkers doing? How well is the board doing? The more of that context that you have, the more likely you're going to have a good evaluation and good goals coming out of it. And don't just conduct an evaluation because you're supposed to. It's something that sometimes co-ops feel, well, we're supposed to be giving them feedback. We're supposed to be evaluating somebody. I heard last year they did this. really think about what it is that you want to get out of this, and think about what are the sort of constructive outcomes that would make this co-op more successful, that would make your members happier, that would make the staff better at doing what you need from them. The report from an evaluation is really important. You want to make sure that that report is available to the general membership. You may need to have a separate version. So there may be a version that only the board can see and the person being evaluated, or only the general manager and the person being evaluated can see. So you may even have a version that is not shared with the person being evaluated. Maybe you have some things that are really critical or sensitive comments that were put in those surveys, and maybe you don't want that person to see some of these really personal, sensitive things that people said, because the more people feel like they can give honest information and have that be sort of held in confidence, the more likely that they're going to be open about what the issues are. So you want to have a version that is sort of kept appropriately confidential, but you need to issue some report to your members in general, to your board, so that everybody can look and say, yes, there was an evaluation. In general, things are going, pretty well, and here's the general things that we're looking for improvement on. You should also have that version that's got all of the details, that might have all of the raw survey results that aren't averaged out, and the full text of all the comments. So you may have that version that's held a little more closely. The report should have measured results of objective questions, right? So that's where you put the charts and the graphs and the averages. And also have some highlights from the written comments where they give you some illustration of a larger point. So you may not want to put every word of all of the comments, but if you're seeing a trend where half the people mentioned that, this person can be, really slow in responding, but when they do, it's really useful, right? Well, that's a useful thing to illustrate. So take one or two of those comments that make that point really clearly and put them into the evaluation report as a sort of highlight to say, people really like how thoroughly you respond to their questions and work on their issues, but they also feel like sometimes it takes 5 days to get back to you, and so, is there some way we can work on your time management? So that's something that those highlights can help you have that conversation with the person being evaluated to talk about what's going well. The evaluation report should also really talk about what the staff person is doing well and say, these are your real strengths as an employee of the co-op. We want to make sure you don't lose sight of these things because they're really awesome and they're useful for us. You should also make sure to follow up on that evaluation report. So have a timeline at the outset that talks about the sort of total length of the process and talks about how soon you're going to follow up. So the report might say, in 3 months, we want to make sure that these things are going better. In 2 weeks, we want to make sure that this problem is eliminated. In 6 months, we want to see that you build on this thing that's awesome so that you can expand it and do more of this kind of work. It may also mean in 6 months, we're going to come back and evaluate whether we want to change your job description or change your pay or your benefits to reflect what it is that we think is going really well or what we think isn't going as well. You're going to want to assign specific people to be responsible for the follow-up, especially if you don't have some sort of standing committee. If you have a personnel committee and everybody knows that they're on that committee and that committee meets every month, well, maybe that's less critical because you can assume that that committee is responsible for doing this. But at any rate, you want to have a clear idea that these are the people who are going to be doing that follow-up, as well as when they're going to do it and what they're going to be doing. You're going to want to make sure that as you make this report on the staff person's evaluation, that you check in with them and see if they have questions about the evaluation. Maybe something's unclear to them. Maybe they have a response and think that the evaluation missed this thing and they want to respond to it, or a thing that they did or didn't do was misunderstood and they want to try and give context. So if the staff member has a response, whether it's given in an oral interview or in writing, you want to make sure to record that and try and file it with their evaluation to say, this is what was said about the staff person, this is how we compiled that feedback, and then this is how they responded, and people in the future can look back and see that whole context. You're going to want to have some formal marker of when the requirements have been met. So we had this evaluation, we thought you were doing really well on these things, but we wanted you to get some formal professional training to do even better on them. And in 6 months, we're going to check in with you and make sure that you had those trainings, so that you can have some formal process and say, yep, on January 1st, we checked in and you had done those things that we asked you last year, and so we can put in your record that you have successfully completed all of the things that were asked of you. If there are some more serious issues that were flagged for improvement, you might want to have a follow-up evaluation. So you might say in that evaluation report that we would like to conduct another evaluation 6 months from now that's more than just a follow-up interview, that's more than just a couple specific things we're looking for improvement on. We'd really like to make sure that everybody has the chance to weigh in. And that might be something that's more serious, maybe not serious enough to, it's not misusing funds or doing something illegal, but it's serious and you're not sure whether this person's the right fit. So that may be a chance to do another evaluation before the sort of regularly scheduled one. Everybody gets an evaluation once a year, but because of these specific issues, we're going to do another full evaluation in 6 months or 3 months. We also have some templates that are available, and we'll be putting those down in the notes for the webinar. And those are templates that you can use and contact NASCO, and we'll give you an editable copy. Those are there as a template to sort of give you an idea of what evaluations often look like for co-ops, but you can get a copy of that and edit it and customize it to fit the needs of your co-op and your organization. We hope this is really useful for you, and we're really looking forward to answering your questions, and we hope that this is useful for your staff as well. Thanks!